We seek the Order of Truth, so we must first reach Government Square. The easiest way is via the staircase by the old clock. What's happening here? You ask me, the victim speaking nonsense, delusions of a dying mind, nothing more. Yeen the Overseer, a stout middle-aged man, stands atop the execution platform. He wears the badge of a city official, and a fringe of dreadlocks hangs down his shoulders from his otherwise bald pate. He gives you a disinterested look as you approach. Please stay back with the others. What's going on here? He casts a brief glance over his shoulder toward Riss. The prisoner, Riss of Flatwater, is being publicly executed as a warning to all who would flout the laws of Sagus Cliffs. What is Riss's crime? Treason. He sold state secrets to the enemies of Sagus Cliffs. How does the execution work? Another rustic. It is very simple, sir. Our nanos induce in him a hallucinogenic state. In this state, he experiences visions, nightmares, really. He speaks of the things he sees, and his words become flesh as they leave his mouth. We shape the flesh into a human-like form. The death you see beside him. He gestures toward the hideous figure, which looks to be made of rotting viscera. As more strands escape his mouth, his death wraps them around him, and they slowly crush the life out of him. That is horrifying. Once the condemned is dead, the devourer of wrongs will eat his corpse. Dude, what is wrong with these people? He raises his chin proud. Thus is justice upheld in Sagus Cliffs. Tell me again what Riss's crime was? What do his words mean? He shrugs. Some believe there is wisdom to be gained from the rantings of the condemned. I have never gleaned any. Others say that the torment of the condemned means nothing, but it deters would-be criminals from committing offenses of their own. I've never noticed that to be true either. Why does the Devourer for Wrongs eat the criminals? He smiles, grim. He is of the Dindra O'Hur, who can suck the memories of the dead from their marrow. In those memories is not only the proof that the condemned were guilty, but also the names of their compatriots and other associates. Many an accomplice has been found out in the belly of the Devourer. I'm sure Riss wasn't working alone. We'll find all his friends soon enough, he thinks to himself. Let me ask you about something else. My patience is not endless, friend, but as you wish. Who are you? He bows slightly. I am Yeen, Overseer of Capital Punishment, charged by the Council with organizing public executions and making sure they run smoothly. Why is this an option? Why is there an option for me to sell somebody out? Alright, farewell. Ah, you have a name. Hello, Tybeer. Tybeer, pacing the edges of the crowd, is a punchy old soldier with a swaggering stride. At the moment, however, his jauntiness seems overshadowed by worry, and he alternates between watching the execution and searching the crowd as if looking for a miracle. Then his eyes light on you. His thoughts are, I've never seen his face before. This might be just the break I need.
I say, you look like someone who believes in justice. How'd you like to help a poor soul wrongfully condemned?
What kind of help do you need? I don't need anything, but my friend there on the platform is dying. The nightmares his executioners have induced in him spill from him with every word he speaks, wrap around him like a snake. He glances at the execution. I know there are but a few strands around him now, but in a few days' time they'll choke the life out of him. I cannot imagine a more horrible way to die. He pauses. Well, that's not true. I have an imagination that would shame a sailor. He leans in. You'll need to be swift and willing to hold justice above the law. There is a way to save them, if you will hear me out. Who are you? Captain Lanshan Tybeer. Retired, he says with a little bow. Extremely retired. Once a soldier of fortune, now it's plaything. He takes another look at Riss. But my story can wait. Saving Riss's life comes first. Why is your friend being executed? Misunderstanding, he says, waving a dismissive hand. Riss and I were hired to deliver some expensive brandy to an out-of-town buyer. He breathes a sigh, weighted with disgust and regret. Don't you believe that the bottles were stuffed with state secrets? Riss was accused of selling information to the enemies of Sega's Cliffs. They called him a traitor. It was a travesty, he growls, his eyes blazing with righteous fury. The poor lad had no idea what was in there. Tragic. If he'd known, he might have escaped too. Then we wouldn't be in this mess. But you did, right? Well, he says, studying the air over your shoulder. There's a place for talking about what I know and what I don't. This isn't that place. He clears his throat. You were part of the scheme. Why aren't you up there with him? Luck, he says, shrugging. I was taking a piss when they came for him. Went through the back window and scampered up to the roof. Shakes his head. I watched poor Riss being led away from my hiding spot. Swore I'd get him free. I hope it's a promise I can keep. What's your plan exactly? A simple one, but it requires nerve. Listen. He lowers his voice. It would be nothing for someone of your noble demeanor to masquerade as a city official and ask this council clerk for an archived copy of an old stay of execution. Once you have it, I'll write out a fresh one and add Riss's name. Then we'll present it to the overseer here, and poor Riss will be set free. Spreads his hands. There you have it. A foolproof, risk-free plan. This actually sounds like an extremely risky plan. Nonsense, he says, waving a hand. It couldn't be simpler. Just be calm, confident, and wear a winning smile. He gives you a winning smile. Where would I find a council clerk? He'd be in Government Square, of course. There's a podium outside the council tower. Can't think of a time he wasn't there. Would it be simpler to talk to the crowd at the execution, convince them to rise up and free Riss? Tybeer looks uneasy. Well, welcome to try, friend, but leave me out of it. Sega's Cliff crowds are notoriously bloodthirsty, and the execution officials are not known for their sense of humor. You might regret it later, and you'd be alone when you did. Too many unknowns in a scheme like that, not enough escape routes. Alright, I can help you. Excellent. Then you would need a proper story and a badge of office. Fortunately, I have the first. You can buy the second from Sengolen, the clothing merchant in Government Square. Folds his arms. Once you have a badge of office, you will tell the council clerk you are from the Judicial Oversight Committee, looking into corruption in the commutation of capital sentences. The stay you're asking for is that of a notorious gangster named Cole Carden, who was mysteriously set free a few years ago. When you get Cole's stay of execution, I'll make a copy with Riss's name on it, and you can give it to the overseer who will free him. You see? Simple. Rubs his hands together. Now, if you'll let me join you, I'd be happy to show you around the city and help you with all of this. And whatever else you have going, what do you say? Sure. It'll be my pleasure, but let's hurry. There's not a moment to lose. Riss hasn't much time. You said he had days. You, sir, told me Riss had days. Paja. This couple stands together, their shared gaze fixed away from you. No words pass between them. Instead, they share a silent language of tenderness. Their bodies turn subtly towards each other, forming a private space between them. His hand reaches for hers, and without looking, she claims it. Still looking past you, they smile together. His is a curving line carved in oak, hers as unabashed and radiant as a lantern on a starless night. Scant thoughts. He's so beautiful. I do hope we're a good home for him. Paja, turning, you see the object of their attention, a young boy darting between the stalls and playing in the dust. Each distant, exhilarated shout widens their respective smiles and tightens their grip on each other. Hey, let me just barge in here and ask, is that your son? Yes, he says firmly. Kellenor. He's still watching the boy, but a wary stillness has spilled into his posture. She swats his shoulder, and there's more punch than playfulness in it. Not yet, she says. We adopted Jerem, and we're waiting to see how he feels about that, aren't we, Kellenor? His eyes flicker stubbornly, but he does not respond. Go away. Go away. Why did you decide to adopt? Well, Kellenor and we've been together for how long? Years, Kellenor says, a glint in his eyes. Let's see how long this one lasts. Well, Kellenor does. I get bad things from Kellenor. And we knew we wanted children, so we tried and tried. We tried a lot. Some days I barely had time to put my clothes on before Kel took them off again. Go on? Paja raises her eyebrows, but continues. Well, there was poor Kel, practically falling asleep on the shift, forgetting his trousers half the time, and me with nothing to show for it but a glow on my cheeks. Clearly, we were working with a barren field. Or faulty seeds, Kellenor adds, deadpan. Does run in the family. So we decided to find a child who needed a home rather than getting old, trying to make one of our own, Paja says. That answer your question? More than adequately. I thought so, Paja says with a wide grin. We get asked this question a lot, and finally we found that being explicit about the process made the questions just melt away. So what brings you here? Jerem likes it, Kellenor says. The stern expression around his stern eyes softens somewhat. We don't have much time between shifts, Paja explains, or money to spend on fripperies, so we bring him to the market when we can and watch him play. It's better than a night at the theater. Kellenor raises their clasped hands and kisses her bruised knuckles. Alright, well, catch you later. Hey, kid. Let's talk. The child skids to a halt and rubs his forehead with a grimy forearm, leaving arrow tracks of dirt across his ruddy skin. Hey, Shava! He pants, shading his eyes from the sun and grinning up at you. Never seen you before. Called me Shava. What does that mean? Huh, Jerem says. A cautious light enters his eyes. Really? You never heard it? Has that changed too? Sounds familiar. What does it mean again? Relief flashes across the child's face. It's a nickname for adults, not a mean one. Not really. Some adults are nice to kids, right? Pat the head, here's a flower, bit of Nash, whatever. But some aren't so nice. They curse, they shove us aside when we're in the way. Kids remember shoving more than smiles, right? So, Shava. Good. At least some things are the same. Do you like playing in the market? Not always, but it's better than school, right? And I like watching Zalfie make sculptures. The ones that go sharp and curly. Reminds me of the monsters on the side of Scarrow Hall. Scarrow Hall. Is that a building? Yeah, Shava, Jerem says, chuckling. Just a building at the center of town, 1,000 hands tall, with a mural on the side, like Zalfie's sculpture, but flat, and in purple rock. Don't think you're going to miss it if you're looking for it, eh? A wave of dizziness clutches at you, and you close your eyes to steady yourself. You kneel in a basement amid rotting rolls of carpet and broken furniture. A stack of paintings draped in dust and mold lean against the sweating wall. The painting in front displays the building Jerem is speaking of, but through this body, this mind, you remember that it was torn down centuries ago to build a forgotten ruler's palace. Jerem, the stink of the basement flees your nostrils as you open your eyes. Jerem, fidgeting, has looked away from you to examine an interesting stall nearby. Why are you so dirty? I don't know. Paja and Kalinor make me wash twice a day. Guess the dirt likes me, eh? Don't your parents worry about you running around here alone? My parents, Jerem says, eyebrows crinkling. You mean Paja and Kalinor? They're watching me until my Mard and Ciro come back for me. Mard and Ciro? Huh, Jerem says, looking just as puzzled as if he'd asked him what hands are for. Mard, Ciro, my parents? You asked me about them. Paja and Kalinor are taking care of me until they come back. That's another one, isn't it? No wonder Paja doesn't like me talking to people. The words tickle your memory, your eyelids flutter, and you see hands, not yours, carefully turning the crackling pages of an ancient book. The roving eye catches the words Mard and Ciro, old words for mother and father. Blinking hard, you focus on Jerem once more. He does not appear to have noticed your sudden fugue, but he is not looking at you either. Keep using words I don't recognize. Where did you hear them? Jerem's face goes white. I'm not allowed to tell adults about that, or about where I'm from. His gaze steals to Paja and Kalinor, both of whom are suddenly taking a greater interest in your conversation. Don't ask, eh? I'm in so much trouble, I'm not even sure what I did. Oh, I hate to see this, Tybeer says, raising his eyes to the sky. Such a bright and promising lad, and he's already keeping terrible secrets from his elders. What? Jerem says, squinting up at him. No, it's not like that. It's nothing rancid. I just promised I'd stay quiet, right? Tybeer gives you a barely perceptible jerk of his chin, urging you on. He's right, Jerem. You shouldn't be ashamed of the truth. Tybeer nods solemn agreement. Can't help noticing that he looks somewhat ashamed. Jerem wavers, looking between his adopted parents and the two of you. Finally, he gives up. Alright, I guess I can tell you, but you can't spread it around, right? Alright, tell me where you're from. Here, Shava, he says, brow crinkling in frustration. I'm from here. It just up and changed without me. I grew up in the Downs. My parents lost their spots on the work chain, and we went to sleep hungry more and more. Neither of them could look at me without crying, he swallows. But everyone in the Downs was starving. It wasn't anything new. People started using that archway more and more. He pauses, scanning your face. Downs have changed too. I can see it on his face. What are the Downs? Blue tide raised. Jerem sighs. If you weren't in the families in the up, everywhere else was Downs, inside the wreckage. We'd dig deep, looking for food first, warm second. My neighborhood was inside this curvy spiral. If you've ever seen paintings of a seashell, it's like that. I knew it. What is wrong with this place? Tell me about the archway. Big things. Always good smells coming out of it too, like roasting meat and sunny days. I used to watch it, but I was never sure what it was for, you know? And the parents in the Downs never talked about it either. He shrugs without looking at you. Then one morning I saw Corna, a friend of mine, and her Mard go up. Mard gives her a kiss, sends her through, and Corna never came out again. Know what did, though? Food? Huh, no, Jerem said. That'd be cruel for Corna's Mard to lose a girl and gain a meal. But no, it was a metal ring, he says, lowering his voice to a confident whisper. Didn't look to be worth much, but every once in a while you'd hear Corna laughing. Wherever she was happy, right? He raises his hand to his cheek, then continues. Handful of days pass, and my Mard takes me for a walk too. Said she'd find me when they'd saved the money, kissed me, and pushed me through it. Woke up outside another archway up in Government Square. Paja and Kalinor were waiting for me there. Jerem rubs his nose. They're not so bad, but I keep hoping my parents will stop by to visit. Even if they don't have the money yet, right? He pauses, rubbing at the sudden moisture in his eyes. Try to laugh a lot so they can hear me, though. Alright, well, see you, kid. What's up, Sculptor? This portly man's cracked and bleeding hands are always moving, picking fretfully at his thick lips, running through his thinning hair, or molding aimless shapes in the air. His clothes are marked with paint, dust, dried blood, and clay. His eyes brim with frustrated tears as he studies the strangely familiar sculptures arrayed about him. A soul like slivers of ice, he mutters, fingertips long, shriveled, sharp, screams trapped in flesh. She holds him in place. She's killing him. He's not looking at her. Why? Why isn't he afraid? Oh. He claws absently at his sparse beard. What am I not seeing? What am I missing? Who was he? What was he feeling? Without that, I can do nothing. What's wrong there, pal? Everything, he says without a moment's pause, effortlessly drawing you into his self-directed tirade. Every detail is almost right, which means everything is wrong. I am Zalfi, stonecarver, sculptor, divine painter of living eyes, and in this challenge, my greatest work, my talent has finally abandoned me. He sweeps a scornful hand at the sculptures. Behold my art, wanderer. Witness these dull stumps, these crude replicas of a sublime being. What is it you think I've made? Try to recall why the sculptures look so familiar. Ooh. You study the sculpture intently. Memory teases your mind, but leaves you empty. Zalfi entirely misinterprets your long silence. Gods, it's even worse than I thought. You can't tell what you're looking at, can you? Someone climbing a tree? A tree? A tree? Where are the branches, I ask you? Where are the curling leaves, the brave twigs? How would I be any kind of artist if I omitted these details from my work? Zalfi kneads his eyes and with his fingers. It is meant to be a portrayal of a man and the amorphous predator that devoured him. You stare at the sculptures, and memory immediately clicks into place. This towering thing is the true form of the creature that pursues you. Zalfi has sculpted the sorrow. I saw this creature on a cold night not long ago. Smoking coronas of blackened light drew me to my window, Zalfi says, shaping the scene with his palms. And there, on the street below, was she, gripping a man in her talons. Before my very eyes, she ripped his essence from him, leaving him a steaming husk. He drops his hands. But what do you care? You don't grasp the importance of capturing such a subject. You wish to capture the emotion of the victim. Zalfi stares at you, dumbfounded. Yes, he says finally. Gods around us, yes. Somebody gets it. He points a trembling finger at all the faceless stone human. He stared eternity in the face and did not blink. But he will be forgotten unless I capture him here. And I cannot do that unless I know what drove him. Zalfi swallows bitterly. The moment he fell, I ran for the street, but the Dindra O'Hur claimed him first. Now I'll never know who he was. Red tide raised. How many statues of this being have you made? Ha! If only my efforts could be limited so. I've sculpted that blasted moment in marble, granite, and clay. Painted it in oil and blood. It even follows me into sleep, where I weave the scene from clouds and dream stuff. A frustrated tear rolls down his cheek. Even those were flawed. Artist, Tybeer murmurs. You think they'd be a happy bunch. They slap paint on a canvas and someone pays them for it. But no. They thrash about in their sleep, moaning and stealing all the sheets. Interesting point. You turn your attention back to Zalfi. Is there anything else you can remember about the creature that killed your subject? Zalfi waves a hand. That's what all the other people ask me. Typical, isn't it? Ignore the incandescent flare of this stranger's brief life and focus on his murderer. She's so much more glamorous. Don't tell me that's what you want now. I thought you understood. Well, you see, the creature is hunting me too. No, I want to see this moment fully, to understand what inspires you. It's not fair to him. He deserves to be remembered. Oh, of course, Zalfi says, a flattered blush rising on his cheeks as he directs your attention to his work. I captured her as I saw her. Perfectly. See the dexterous, overlong fingers. The flesh formed of shrieking prey. But there was more to that moment than even I could capture here. Red tide. In studying her from my window, I knew that she did not belong in our world, and yet could not help but see her there, as though she was forcing me to accept her presence. Alfie licks his lips. To look upon her is to see death made flesh, and yet her victim saw her and did not flee. Why? What granted him such bravery when we lesser creatures cowered at the coming of the night? Why don't you tell me about the Dendro her? They are a cult and a curse, Alfie says. They would have you believe they exist to preserve the great works of humanity, to celebrate life. You may even believe them until you smell their breath. The truth is that they squat in their underbelly chapel, eating corpses, and claiming it gives them power. Who and where are the Dendro her? If I learn anything about your subject, I'll let you know. What's up, my guy? Don't talk to me. Talk to the boss. Sure. Makes sense. I suppose you're the boss. Tall Magyar. As you approach, the wild-haired woman eyes you speculatively and whispers something to her companions. They burst out laughing, and a slight smirk plays about her lips. A breathing mask dangles from a cord around her neck, and you can see where it has cut permanent grooves into her face. She ruffles her hair, messing it still further, and sings out, "Come to buy a slave, cast-off? If you've come to me, you must want something of the sort. He's a fresh one. I can smell it on him." How do you know I'm a cast-off? The tattoo. I've had dealings with your kind before. I know about you. She rakes her fingers through her hair. If anything, the motion serves to obscure her vision even more. So, cast-off, I have information you might want. Of course, it comes with a price. What kind of information? You think you'll get it from me that easily? I don't think so. I know your type, you cast-offs. Not a one of you can be trusted. I give you this information, you're gone before I can collect my price. So forgive me if I decline to say outright what secrets I hold. One of my wards has run off. She's taken a head wound. Not my doing, and I've been watching after her. I don't know where she's gone, but I suspect she's headed to Cliff's Edge. Plenty of other urchins clamoring about the place, and she'd find it easy to blend in. Sadly, my troop and I are detained here, so we can't go ourselves. These leek nibbers are tired of hunting her. Damned girl hides well, too well. She's a scrawny child, name of Rin. Head wound, but it's covered by dark curly hair. Has a little necklace around her throat, babbles about her gods. Go get her for me and I'll tell you what you want to know. Answer a few questions for me first. She sighs. Fine. Tell me about yourself. I'm a slaver. I'm the last person you want to make an enemy. I've got a reputation for coming through on my word. Nothing else need concern you. What do you know about the Order of Truth? You want to deal with them? Be my guest. Those pompous Aeon priests are up by Government Square. Think they can unlock the secrets of the past, but they're not focusing on what's most important, which is creating for the future. They say they're studying, learning, but the fact is they're not doing anything useful. Don't let them tell you otherwise. What do you know about the cult of the Changing God? Her lip curls. Delusional, meaning seekers. They spend their time chasing their imaginary deity, ignoring what it means to be alive. Oh, what has he done now, they say. Can I tongue his divine arse? As if knowing his life makes theirs any better. By studying his actions, they might be able to replicate his success. Studying his life provides meaning to theirs. Who are you to judge? Here. Let's go with that. Blue Tide. Please, if they were going to succeed at anything, they'd have done it by now. But look around. You hear any of them doing anything of note? Living in grand mansions? Owning fleets of airships? You don't. It's because they're intent on living in someone's shadow. She curls her tongue and spits. Nothing grows in the shade. That's factually inaccurate. Several species of arthropods make their homes under the earth. The creatures that live in the forgotten tunnels of the ancients have not seen light for millions of years, yet they thrive. She breaks off, smiling slightly. I can't abide ignorance. Toll. She glares daggers at Callie, nor metaphor, it seems. Get your little nose out of my conversation. I have some questions about slavery in Sagus Cliffs. It's not so bad, not horrific. Almost no one sells them for parts anymore. Fact is, most of them go down to the Bloom, where they can work off their debt to society by opening a maw or two. It's not a forever thing, it's a punishment. Some questions about Sagus Cliffs. Ask someone who cares. I think the city's a sewer. Alright. Hello, merchant. Best selection of migraines in the city. Right here, free samples. You're selling migraines. It's fun. Apologies. I'm out of stock right now, but pre-orders are available. Ooh. At your return, Paja and Kellinor tense. But do not look away from Jerem's adventures in the marketplace. Jerem told me about the door he went through. Had to pry, didn't you? Kellinor growls. Calm down, Kel, Paja says, putting her hand on his chest. Stranger, can we convince you to leave this alone? Please? For the sake of our family? If Jerem finds out, I'm terrified to think what will happen. I just want to know what's going on here. All the blue tides today, huh? She bites her lip and searches your eyes. Kellinor's hand slides over her shoulder to cup the back of her neck. Maybe you're true to your word, maybe you're not. The more we argue, Paja hisses, the more likely Jerem will overhear. Her eyes shift to you, weary and despairing. Jerem got here through the House of Empty Time. He comes from Sagus, like us, only centuries in the past. That's why his speech is different. Why he remembers places that aren't here anymore. She jabs your chest with a calloused finger. Keep this to yourself. We'll tell him ourselves when we find a kind of way of letting a child know that everyone he knows and loves is long dead and dust. I'll kick the skist out of him if he breaks my little boy's heart. I won't be the one to tell him, but you should, and soon. You're right, Paja says, and we will, I promise. Tell me more about this House of Empty Time. We don't know any more than we told you, she says, shrugging. Find the housekeepers and ask her. Her name was... She trails off, forehead creased in thought. Alcine Perry, Kellinor says, keeper of the House of Empty Time. You might find her in Government Square. Thank you, Kel. I couldn't hold on to a name if it was buried in a bag of shins, Paja says cheerfully. Anyway, the very moment we decided to adopt, she was knocking on our door. We were nervous, but you can't argue with the results. She beams past you at Jerem. Alright, well, catch you later. Hello, Prada. In the shadows cast by the folds of this merchant's cowl, you glimpse hints of verdant chitin and amber mandibles, erupting from pale human flesh. Her voluminous robes cannot hide the fact that her movements are off, as if too many joints inhabit too little space. But her voice is warm, tumbling flood of spoken thoughts and impulses. A fair afternoon to you, warm, isn't it? Something begins humming in one of her many pockets, and her brilliant, multifaceted eyes flickered toward an invisible point in the distance. Well, not as warm as it could be, but this is the warmest minute of the week by a considerable margin. She trails off, but the hum continues. Oh, you have one of those tattoos too. Anyway, can I interest you in some prime artifacts, dusty relics, Numenera of uncertain origin? He looks like that pale woman. No, you're right, Bertie. Not looks, smells. Never visited this city before. Can you tell me about it? No, she laughs, and it sounds like a cloud of insects taking flight. I'll do better than that. Tell me anything about this place that worries you, and I'll make it better. That's a guarantee. We do love to help, don't we, Rhonda? What part of the city should I see first? All of it. Take it from me, everything is worth seeing. Even the boring bits. Take your time, talk to everyone you meet, and keep your eyes open. Are there dangerous areas I should avoid? Not at all, Prada says, waving her claws at you. I heard so many rumors about how the underbelly was ruled by vicious thugs, but when I went down there to make a trade, no one so much as glared at me. She hesitates. Of course, they were probably worried I was going to snip their heads off, but the underbelly is fascinating and worth the risk. Most everywhere is. Do you, Tybeer says, leaning over to look at her shrouded hands, snip heads off, I mean? You don't seem the type. I might be, Prada says brightly. I've never had to find out. He leans back out of snipping range with a fixed, polite smile. Still finding my way. Think I could get a discount on your goods? Well, she says, looking momentarily uncertain, it's like watching a lone cloud pass across a summer sky. You know what? I'll give you a discount on everything I carry from now until the last star in the sky collapses. Or, you know, one of us dies. Can't do a thing about that. She laughs again, clearly unworried by the prospect. Maybe let's talk about something else. You said someone else had my tattoo. Ooh. Oh, right, a pale lady. She wanted me to fix an artifact of hers, but I couldn't make any sense of it. And that is rare, believe me. Prada sighs. Felt sorry for her, to tell you the truth. She seemed sad, like she'd lost something and was never going to get it back. She wouldn't say what she'd lost when I asked her. I know I could have helped. I'm looking for someone who can repair a complex machine. Can you help? Oh, I'd love to. Complex machines are my favorite. But, no, I shouldn't. I'm really behind on work orders this month. This may surprise you, but I'm very, very, very easily distracted. She shrugs beneath her robes. You're better off with someone else, sorry. You appear to be transforming into an insect. I know, isn't it fantastic? I think it might be caused by the intermingling fields of the Numenera I use to organize my thoughts. Or the ones I'm selling. Maybe all of them. You never know how a variety of ciphers will interact with each other. They're such fun. Tell me about the Numenera you use to organize your thoughts. Oh, it's simple, sort of. Prada pulls 3 tiny Numenera from her robes. A buzzing bird figurine, a green music box, and a circular spring. I have too many thoughts. If I tried to hold them all in one brain, I'd just stand and drool, you know? So each of these have a slightly different purpose. Which one do you want to hear about? Tell me about the bird. Birdie's pretty simple. If I'm running with a great thought I don't have time to complete, I shunt it into her so I can pick it back up later. She does make everything smell like berries, though. The music box. Jade Box is a tough old lady. If I'm rolling with a more complex line of thinking, I bring her up. She chomps the individual ideas and feeds them back to me. I'm trying to use her as little as possible, because she gives me headaches. No, what's the opposite of head eases? Prada frowns. Anyway, they're worse than headaches because you can't go around thinking everything is alright. It's bad for your health. Circular spring? That's Rhonda. She's a bit scary. I can shunt a bunch of thoughts into her, but she doesn't process them. She just gives them back to me, slightly changed, and infinitely better than when they went in. Prada leans in conspiratorially. Try not to use her much, she whispers. It feels like cheating. Actually, I kind of want to buy one, Prada flushes. I hate to say no. I've had them since I was little. They're practically family. Alright, fair enough. I'm gonna use that discount we talked about. What have you got for sale, Prada? Spray Flesh, Lutridated Force, Fleetfoot Moss, Cephalic Rush, Contingent Subroutine. Ooh, interesting. Third Man. Refills all the pools. That's pretty valuable. I cannot afford it. Price Sector Cipher. Confers Price Sector's eye on target. Okay. Phase Detonation. Deals 12 trans-dimensional damage. Confers Hobbled to all characters in range. Reconstitutor Cipher. Heals 10 points of health on all allies in range of target point. Cryophorus Dart. Deals 20 chemical damage. Confers bleeding. Well, those are fun. I'm gonna pass for now.
With alacrity. Without doubt.
What's going on here? You inch closer to the lattice of energy that holds the creature, and as you lean in, the ugly glaive with a sledgehammer slung over his shoulder shouts at you. Oi! No gawking for free. Pay ElShinto or get gone. He glowers at you, hand reaching for the haft of his hammer until you step away from the cage. Hello, Mr. ElShinto. In front of you is a weary traveler whose grim visage is mostly obscured by a pointy hat. On closer inspection, the lines of his face indicate he has seen much and has many tales to tell. Hello there, friend, he says. Here to see the Nycthemeron? My friend in the cage over there, or are you just looking to spend a word or two? I have some question about your Nycthemeron. He's far from mine, friend, ElShinto says with a raspy chuckle, as you'll likely see if I get too close to his cage. He tips his hat at you. Go on, ask your questions. What is one of those things? A biomechanical union of stubborn curiosity and frothing malice, he says. Who made them, no one can say, but they cannot be trusted or befriended. Cross their paths or thwart their incomprehensible whims, and they'll kill you if they can. Wait, you called the creature a he. Is it male? Could be female, or genderless, or many-gendered. Who can say? I have our friend imprisoned, and I feel better about that fact if I don't call him it. How did you capture the creature? I suppose you could blame luck, he says. A little early to call it good or bad, though. His eyes seek the sky as he begins his story. I was working on, well, call it a trap. In a valley, through some nameless ruin. Kenadu was off hunting for dinner, and I work in a daze. Always do when I'm concentrating. A smile flits across his face. Near sunset, the trap was still in pieces, and I heard Kenadu roaring my name. I turned just in time to see our guest bearing down on me. The creature's volley of molten energy crackled off the personal barrier I'd left active while building the trap, but I knew it couldn't hold. Then Kenadu leapt off the valley edge onto the Nycthemeron's back, bashing it with his hammer. It shrieked, and then night fell, and the creature went still. ElShinto shrugs. I worked, a touch frantically, I admit, to finish the trap. It hadn't been designed for our guest, but as you can see, he gestures at the creature. It worked. Lucky it did. Gives me a lot of confidence for our trip back to the Laharic tool. How did you get the creature into the city? A fair question, he says, casting a lazy glance back at the cage. But a longer answer, and not as interesting as I'd like. So let's just say that the trap is more collapsible than it appears. What do you plan on doing with the Nycthemeron when you're done showing it off? We're likely to release it and run as if every kind of demon in the world is after us. We're not trappers, see? We're explorers. And we're only in this to save up some coin for a journey across a long patch of ground. Rubs the back of his neck. Not that our motives make much difference to our guest. He'll want to boil our skins once we let him go, and I can't say I blame him. We should do it at night, but even then I expect he'll try to kill us. Want to ask about something else. Looking for someone who can repair a complicated device. Must be in desperate shape if you're patrolling the circus, talking to strangers, he says. Do you have a piece of the device? It might be that I can offer my opinion. A new device. Perhaps it could be... I could use it to improve the trap. Yes, I have this shard of crystal. He accepts the crystal shard with great care, turning it over and over in his cracked hands. In the silence, you catch a hint of wood smoke and notice that his eyes have turned slate gray. Living crystal, he mutters at last, seeking a greater whole. Still warm, maybe alive, maybe thinking. He hands the shard back to you with a touch of regret. Interesting piece of tech, but not one I know much about. Sorry, friend. Try asking around some more. Not a piece of tech I can use either. Ah, well. I want to see the creature up close. Your curiosity does you credit, friend. It will only cost you 25 shins. 25? That's too much. I'm the only one in line. How about 10 shins? Tybeer is a very persuasive individual. Worth every shin, I promise, he says, pocketing your admission fee. Visit our guest whenever you're ready. The cage in which the creature floats is a simple frame that contains a shimmering, nearly transparent cylinder of energy. It emits a low hum, barely audible, that sets your teeth on edge. The container is a delicate filigree of ornate materials with no apparent controls. But surely they must be hidden somewhere in the traceries and protrusions of the wirework. You approach the cage cautiously. The monster within looks like a fungal blob mated with a muscular ichthoid. Its multiple tentacles, terminated syringes, needles, and injectors. This mast sits atop and is integrated with a floating orb of some type. It seems to be both mechanical and biological, with one system flowing smoothly into the next, a creation from some mad nightmare. The energy field darkens protectively and automatically as the creature throws itself at its walls, thrashing and striking mindlessly with its needle-tipped tentacles. The darkening is almost a strobe-like effect. Even as you watch, one of its tentacles coils back and blasts furious plasma at the walls of its cage. Cage holds, but the shields dim to prevent any radiation from the blast escaping. Examine the cage. The cage appears to be made of a mixture of synth, spun strong glass, and a lightweight metal intricately embroidered to create mind-warping patterns, evocative and strange. Energy shifts and flickers among the crevices, somehow being shaped by the form of the materials. Your closer examination reveals a small panel worked cunningly into the frame of the cage. Some of the filigrees here are worn and smooth, as if slowly eroded by friction. Perhaps these are the controls. The cage's hum dips lower for a moment, throbbing, almost at the limit of your hearing. Your bones and teeth ache briefly, and everyone within 3 meters of the cage claps their hands to their ears. You! Are you trying to kill us all? Leave the cage alone. He shoves you away from the cage. Do you even know what will happen if that thing gets free? Delicate construction of the cage belies its strength. If you're not careful, you might touch the exposed energy that circulates through its frame. A small disguised panel may house its controls. Touch the cage! You reach out to the cage, your fingers hovering over some of the cunningly worked materials, and then you lay your hands on the cage. Close a circuit in the energy somewhere, or you become a part of it, and strange energies jolt through your body. The shock hurls you away from the cage. Ow! What are you? If anything, the creature redoubles its efforts to strike at you. Its limbs a flurry of rage. How did you come to be here? It draws away from the edge of the energy field for a moment, as if gathering its thoughts. And then it launches itself at you, rebounding off the deceptive solidity of the cage. Its tentacles flail wildly, the needles at their tips glinting and oozing. What can you tell me of this place? A dim light builds underneath the Nycthemeron. Whatever. The orb at its base glowing brighter and brighter. 2 tentacles stroke it, and they pull out a streamer of bright lightning. They stretch it between themselves, building in intensity, and then they hurl it at you. The walls of the cage darken instantly, and when they lighten again, you see the monster within flailing, crashing fruitlessly against its invisible walls. Can you understand me at all? The creature redoubles its efforts to strike at you, its limbs a flurry of rage. Thank you for stopping by WeakT Gaming. Make sure you leave a comment, give us a little like or a dislike, whatever you feel like. Maybe subscribe to the channel, and hopefully see you at the stream sometime. Twitch.tv/WeakT Gaming.